Learning here at Nashville State. We also have a couple of other staff members from the Office of Online Learning here. Dr. Jamie Edwards, Beverly Bradley, and Heather Ripito are also here. So we are here in full force, and we are here to answer any of your questions related to D2L or related to online learning generally. We are here as a support resource for you. And I'm going to start recording before I forget. Excellent. Okay, so I'm here today to just share a few tips and tricks for maximizing your beginning of the semester prep in D2L. I'm sure this is something that's on all of our minds as we start to get ready for this new semester. So I will say this presentation is mainly geared towards instructors with fully online courses, but the information presented here, it's intended to be useful to those of you who may have hybrid, virtual, or on-ground courses as well. So not all of the advice presented here will apply to everyone, perhaps in the same way, but this workshop should at least apply, at least to some degree, to everyone who is using their course's D2L shell. So to start us off today, I just wanted to share a list of 6 tips that I put together for starting the semester strong online and setting a strong basis for student engagement in your online course, beginning now and carrying you through the rest of the semester. So these tips are intended as more general pedagogical tips related to putting quality learning content online. And again, just setting the stage for good student instructor engagement throughout the semester. And then we're going to move more into the nuts and bolts of semester prep, or more the technical side of working with D2L and some of the tools that D2L has to offer that you can take advantage of now as you are preparing for the upcoming semester that might save you a little time, a little bit of headache further down the road. So as we're going over that nuts and bolts checklist, I'm going to open it up to some questions and demo a few things in D2L upon request. So at that point, if you see anything in the list that you want me to go over or show you how to do live, just let me know and we will make space for that. If you have questions that are really just specific to your own course or your own course shell, I'd ask you to hold those until the end or to schedule a consultation with me. I'm always happy to work one-on-one with faculty. But if there is a general tool that you would like to see demoed in a general fashion, then I would be happy to stop and do that. I'll also say, if you miss anything in this recording, it will be or in this session, it will be recorded and it will be made available later to all attendees. And I'm also going to send around this PowerPoint as well as some related resources that I'm going to cover in the talk. So first off, as promised, I'm going to run through 6 quick tips I've put together for starting the semester off strong if you are using your course's D2L shell in any capacity, be it fully online or as a supplement to your in-person course. So those 6 tips are, we are going to go over each one of these in a little bit more depth. They are review and reflect, build it up front, build for online, be present, set routines, and finally make D2L work for you. So these are just 6 tips that you can implement now, or 6 habits that you can implement now as you're beginning your semester prep. So we're going to go through each one of those in a little bit more detail and talk about some practical recommendations for actually putting these principles in action. So the first recommendation I would make is to take some time to review and reflect, much of the spirit of the new year and New Year's resolutions. It's really important to take some time to review and reflect after every semester, and especially in these few weeks we have before we kick off the spring semester. So now is a great time to look back on your student evaluations or other evaluative feedback you may have received on your course in the past, with an eye towards how you might improve or refine your teaching methods for online. If you are a seasoned instructor, just take some time to reflect on things that worked, things that didn't work in the past, and really, most importantly, try to identify what changes or modifications you want to make in the upcoming semester. Of course, it's not possible to do everything, so you may also want to think about what kinds of changes you would want to prioritize as you grow as an online instructor. Just some examples, for instance, if you for instance, in your feedback from students or from your colleagues, you hear that maybe the course shell students found the course shell difficult to navigate or confusing. Maybe it would pay to spend just some time working on making the organization of your course a little bit more straightforward. There's a question in the chat from Hope Jackson. Where can we find our evaluations from students? I believe that evaluations are done through Evaluation Kit. Heather or Diana, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you can also access your previous year student evaluations through Evaluation Kit. Not entirely sure about that. Oh, yes. Okay. Heather confirmed. That's correct. You can access your previous student evaluations through Evaluation Kit, and Heather's going to share some more info about that. So again, if you just keep hearing certain patterns in your evaluations that you think could be implemented constructively or productively into your online course, now's just a time to think about that. Another issue that often comes up in online is student engagement. Maybe you've noticed that student engagement in your online course kind of flagged in the last semester, which is very common in the online environment. In that case, maybe it's a good time to reconsider your syllabus policies regarding student engagement online, maybe set stricter requirements for engagement and discussions, more iterative, graded assignments related to student engagements. D2L even allows you to track student logins if you want to set a minimum number of logins per week as a requirement for a grade. That is also a possibility in D2L and something to explore if, for instance, that happens to have been an issue in the past for you. Of course, if you have any questions about how to actually put some of these things into action, or you want someone to bounce ideas off of, we are here to do that with you. Please reach out to me or another instructional designer in the Office of Online Learning. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have several in attendance here. We'd all be very happy to help. I will put my email in the chat. It was on the title slide, but I will also make sure it is here as well, in case you want to take some time to work on that first step, reviewing and reflecting together. Yes, I do keep hearing the notification beep from people coming in. Let me see if I can turn that off. Because it would be much better without that. There we go. Thank you for pointing that out. Because it was also, it was grinding on my nerves as well. So thank you. So our next step, as you're preparing for the next semester, and just thinking about how we can be proactive in terms of preparing for what's coming next, I suggest build it up front. And what I mean by that, this piece of advice mainly applies to instructors who are starting from scratch with a blank shell. If you are building content for the first time, or even if you're revising content that you've already put online, now is a great time to do it and to really focus your efforts on that. When teaching online, it's always best to front load building your content and to have as much of your course in place as possible by day one, because if you've taught online before, you know it can often take even more effort to have all of your materials ready to go on day one as opposed to an in-person course. There's a much greater amount of prep time that is required to put materials online. So more front load prep is great because it not only takes some pressure off of you during the busiest parts of the semester as we go later down the road when things start to pick up, it's also great for students. It leaves you with more time to work on giving timely feedback on assignments and interacting with students in your course during the semester if you were able to front load the actual building of your course contents. If you are trying to put contents into your shell in a hurry, we recommend that before day one, you focus your efforts on the most important pieces of your course. So that is creating your introductory materials, that's your syllabus, your course schedule, and other essential information of that nature. Could also include introductory activities, a syllabus quiz, however you would like to, whatever you would like students to do first when they enter into your course. It's also important to at least have descriptions of all of your major assignments. Even if you don't have all of your instructions fully prepared, it's helpful to just know what those assignments are and have some idea of where they will fall in the course and what the nature of those assignments will be. In D2L, it's also helpful to set up all of your modules or to begin your course on day one, having at least the names of all of your modules in place and listed in your course, and ideally some kind of introduction to the topic that will be covered in each one, as a kind of outline or a kind of skeleton that you can build around as you go through. Creating your quizzes and exams is also something that is highly recommended to do before day one. If you are using a publisher test bank, that can be relatively easy to do if you are just importing questions that were supplied to you by a publisher. And then finally, probably most importantly, is to make sure that your gradebook is set up before day one. It's much easier in D2L to have the gradebook set up before you begin assigning grades, rather than trying to fix a gradebook towards the end of the semester, once students have received grades. So our next in our list is to build for online. And what I mean by that, again, this one is going to mainly apply to those of you who are building from scratch or making substantial revisions to your course, and less so to those of you who already have a prepackaged course that you are importing. And this sounds a little bit obvious, but if you are building content in your shell, just make sure that you are building it for online and with the online format and an online audience in mind. So in other words, don't try to take an in-person course and squeeze it into an online course. It's important to be really mindful of some of the constraints that we have, in terms of what we're able to do online, and also also to take full advantage of the many opportunities that we have with D2L and with teaching online. So a bit about some of those unique constraints that we need to be mindful of and adjust for if you are transitioning to online. Learning online increases the cognitive load on students. There's a technological barrier oftentimes there that students have to adjust to if they are new to online courses. Additionally, studies have shown that students tend to read differently and read less of the page in front of them when it is on a screen as opposed to a physical page. And this actually applies to all web users universally. The average web user only reads about 20% of the words that they see on a screen. So scanning is much more common when people are reading on the web, and that's something that you might consider designing for and keeping in mind, especially if you have a lot of text content that you're wanting students to read that you're putting into your D2L shell. Even if you use video as the primary means of conveying your course information, we also still have a limited grasp on students' attention span. Their studies show that engagement with videos tends to drop dramatically past around the 10 or 15-minute mark for videos. So what all of that means is we just have to be very intentional about what content we are putting in our online shell in order to minimize that cognitive load and to maximize student engagement. And my best recommendation in terms of thinking about that is to really focus in on what your core learning objectives are for the course. That's how you can do much more with somewhat less. If you're looking for places to streamline content, useful questions to ask yourself might be, what do I want students to learn from this class, this unit, or this module? Do my assignments line up with what it is I want students to learn, or do my course objectives match what I'm having students do in the assignments? And do all of my learning materials directly aid students in completing the assignments and meeting my objectives? Is what is in my course entirely need to know information, or are there places where it would be possible to maybe streamline a little bit? The other piece of this recommendation, building for online, has to do with good web design as well. I think it's possible to sometimes forget that we are building web pages, and that an online course does exist as a web page. And so there are a couple of tips and tricks to keep in mind there. That's not to say that you need to know anything about coding web pages or creating web pages, just that you need to keep a couple of simple principles in mind, again, to kind of adjust to what we talked about in terms of decreased student engagement with long textual documents or long videos, etc. So just a few simple principles to keep in mind with when you are designing in D2L for the web is to think about the readability of your pages. So if you think about any news website, for instance, that you've ever seen, these news websites are designed not to just plop down walls of text, even if they are presenting textual content. They're designed to be somewhat scannable. And again, studies show that most people, when they're on web pages, tend to scan more than they tend to read every word on the screen. So ways you can make your text content more scannable might include using headings, which just creates a more visible structure, more logical structure that the eye can follow through a document. Adding links, this is super useful in D2L. The quick link function in D2L, which appears in any of the HTML editors, if you've seen this while you're creating a content page, a news page, what have you, you can add a link to any other part of your course. So if you want to link a student directly to a quiz, you can put a link in there. And that can also be helpful for connecting various somewhat disparate sometimes parts of your courses to your course together. And then the other great thing to include when you're designing a D2L is navigational instructions. So words like before, after, next are great for directing students through your course so they always know what it is that they're supposed to be doing next. Sometimes a little bit of guidance and a little bit of conscious navigational directions can be really helpful for improving the navigational quality of your course. So this is just an example. This screenshot is just an example of what a well-designed content page in D2L could look like. It's not just walls of text or many paragraphs of text. It uses headings at the top, the analyzing deductive arguments. There are bullet points and numbering. Those are also great for creating more white space, which makes the page more readable. And then you can't really tell, but there is a link to the quiz that accompanies this content down at the bottom, practice quiz number 1. And we see some directional navigational instructions. Read this and then next do this. So that can be really helpful for helping students navigate and understand the logical structure of your course. Another tip in the direction of thinking about structure and navigation is to use your course layout as a course planner or schedule in itself. So if in your table of contents inside of content, it's great to have your modules ready for the first day. And those can also serve as a kind of table of contents for what you're going to cover in each unit and what you would like students to do in each unit. So that's something that I highly recommend that you keep in mind as you are designing, if you are designing content for the upcoming semester. Our next tip is to be present, which is so important in online courses because oftentimes as instructors, we are an invisible presence to students. If you're fully online, you may never meet your students face to face. So it's really important to make your presence known, and it really takes a little bit of intentional effort to make that happen. So I've included here a couple of tips for how you can create habits of presence as you go through the semester, beginning right now. Just a few simple things that you can do from the beginning of the course to make sure that students know who you are, how to contact you, and to feel comfortable reaching out to you. We know that that instructor presence is very important because it is directly related to student engagement in online courses. When students feel that their instructor is absent, they are possibly more likely to become absent themselves, possibly fall behind, which is also a common occurrence in online courses. So just a couple of simple things that you can do as you are doing your semester prep to establish those habits of presence is, for instance, making sure you send out a day 1 email or a news announcement that introduces the students to who you are as a person, giving them a preview of what the course will be about, and then telling students how to get started, again, with those clear navigational directions. Click here, go here, do this, and then that. So on this screen, I just shared, this is a really excellent example of a welcome message. It really draws you in, it creates interest in the course, it gives something of a sense of what the instructor's expertise in the subject is. And then at the bottom, you'll notice that there are some wonderful navigational instructions, drawing the students into the course right away. In order to get started in this course, please click on content on the navigation bar, then do this, then that. So that's a really good example. If you, but something simpler than that could also work. So just another example announcement that you might post. Again, this is just a template that I've shared before in the past. Just saying, welcome to the course, a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and then any crucial information or first day tasks that you would like students to perform. A Meet Your Instructor page is also something that you could prepare now if you're looking to improve your presence in your D2L based course for the next semester. Highly recommend creating a content page that just, again, provides a little bit of information about you, your contact information, a picture if you feel comfortable sharing that. It could be helpful for students to have a face to put to the name at the very least. So just another kind of practical recommendation for making sure students know who you are and how to find you. An introductory video. So even better than a static page or an announcement, you could record just a short introductory video. This is something that you can do as you are preparing, and it doesn't take any time at all. So even if you are totally inexperienced recording video, if you have a webcam, it's very easy to post a video in D2L without any external software. So if you're posting a news item or a content item, just click on the Insert Stuff button, and that is highlighted here with this big green arrow pointing to it. And you will have the option to add a video note. And that will automatically turn on your webcam, allow you to record a video, delete it if you don't like it, post it if it is how you like it. And it takes no time at all to do. I did one here myself, and as an example, it's 8 seconds long, and it took me about that long to do it as well. And that's a really effective way to connect immediately with your students when they come into the course. They see who you are, see that you are a human being on the other side of the screen. And it's just a great way to connect with students, and also maybe even go over some of the basic expectations or information related to the course, if you'd like a lengthier introduction. Next in our list, we have set routines. In the beginning of the semester, of course, is a great time to set new habits, in the spirit of the new year, to set new routines. So, and having routines in an online course is especially important for students because, again, reduces that cognitive load, that additional cognitive load that is created by learning online. And it can also reduce some confusion about expectations early on, heading those off from the beginning. It could also be helpful to you as an instructor because this is a good opportunity to help you establish habits for communication and providing timely feedback that's so important in online courses. The through thread, I think, through all of these is the importance of communication with students, regular communication with students. So setting a regular communication schedule and communication habits that you can maintain throughout the semester are great. If your goal is to post one news item a week, that's great, and that's a really good way to ensure that you are habitually and continually staying in contact with your students. This is something you might even consider outlining in a syllabus, providing a communication plan in your syllabus. And this just helps students also it also helps set expectations for students as well as setting habits for your own benefit. A communication plan in your syllabus could outline how you prefer to be contacted, when you will respond to emails, when you will not respond to emails, and when students can expect grades to be turned around. So just setting reasonable expectations and creating accountability for both yourself and for your students. Your week one content is also a great place to set routines early on. So I would highly recommend using your week 1 content or your module 1 content to model any routines that you're expecting to continue through the semester that are going to scale up through the semester. So for instance, if you plan to have a discussion and a quiz every week, you might consider having a low stakes discussion and a low stakes quiz in that first week, just so students are getting into the habit of what the class routines are going to be. Again, consistency is often a virtue in online teaching. It can be helpful for for uh, um, helping with student engagement. Yes, Jamie.
Oh, I wanted to piggyback on that idea of we want to try to model what we're doing in like our on-ground classes. So students are expected to attend class like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So if you set an online expectation of students to the week will begin on Monday, you may have a discussion due on Wednesday and a quiz due on Friday, and set that weekly routine so they kind of automatically know to attend in an online class. So try to be consistent in the way you're setting your expectations for students to submit, assignments and activities.
Right. Yeah. What you said, Jamie, is so important because you referenced attendance. In the online environment where students are not physically coming to class, you lack that kind of regularity that comes from having a regularly scheduled class. So having regular routines of certain items that are due can be really helpful for establishing a kind of regular schedule in terms of attendance at class. So thank you, Jamie. That's an excellent point. And that in effect, you're modeling the structure of what happens in an in-person class, just in a somewhat different format. Okay. And Ruben, I'm sorry, I did not see your message in the chat asking about quick links that are whether or not they are different from simply links in D2L. And they're not different in the sense that quick links are also URLs that lead you to a web page, but using the quick link function gives you the option to insert a regular link to just any old web page, say google.com, but or you can also insert a link to another place in your course. So it'll give you the option to link, say, to quizzes or a particular quiz, or an option to link to assignment Dropbox. I'll demo this once we get closer to a stopping point. So thank you for bringing that up, Ruben. Yeah, it just facilitates adding links. You can add a URL or you can just add a link to another place in the course. And that can be super useful to students. Say if you have a news announcement and it's something like, don't forget to do the homework due on Friday. And then you could link the homework directly to the assignment Dropbox that you were talking about. So it could also help clear, it's great for clarifying communication in the online space as well. Okay. So and to that end, that actually does bring me to D2L and making D2L work for you. This is probably where we're going to branch out a little bit and start looking at more of the technical nuts and bolts of semester prep. I know all of you are very interested in. But just also wanted to highlight that there are a couple of tools, we don't have to look at all of them, that can really enhance your semester prep and get you set for the rest of the semester. In the first place, if you're not familiar with D2L, I would strongly recommend that you take some time to get familiar and comfortable with the technology by playing around in your own course shell. So just spend some time exploring that if it is available to you. If you do need help and you have specific questions in terms of an intro to D2L, you can take advantage of the more specialized workshops we have coming up on certain features within D2L, or reach out to me or one of our instructional designers. We'd be more than happy to answer any specific questions in your course shell for you. If you are a more advanced user of D2L, which I know some of you are, there are still a lot of useful time-saving tools in D2L that I think often go underutilized that I just want to call attention to. And that could be really beneficial to you as you are thinking ahead and being proactive about thinking about the next semester. So I'm sure a lot of most of you are familiar that D2L does have auto graded quizzes option, so you can create quizzes for assignments that don't require any direct instructor feedback that will be auto graded. And sorry, I was just looking at Jamie's recommendation. Don't accidentally delete content. If you are making changes, just hide it instead. The other thing that I think is just a super useful tool that not a lot of people seem to use is D2L rubrics, which is so useful. It's something that you could do right now to get ready for the semester. If you already know what your assignments are and roughly how you're going to be grading them, you can set up rubrics within D2L that can link to those assignments. And what D2L rubrics allows you to do is to essentially check off the criteria that students meet as you are reviewing their work. And that's really helpful for speeding up the grading process. If you're providing repetitive feedback on many different student assignments, it might be more useful to put that in the rubric so that you're providing consistent feedback that goes to all students who meet a certain criteria or whose work could be described in a certain way. So I would strongly recommend that you explore that option and set those up in advance as you are prepping for the semester. Something we can also look at live in D2L as well if you're interested. You can also schedule news posts in advance. You'll notice that everything in D2L has a start, just about everything has a start and end date, including news posts. So you can write up a news post if you know, for instance, you're going out of town and you have kind of a routine news post that you would like to appear while you're gone. You can go ahead and write that, draft it up, and schedule it to post automatically on the day that you want it to appear. So a useful function if you're wanting to draft some of those in advance. And Dr. Howard Doty, did you have a question? I think you're muted.
Yeah, real quick. Years
Mhm.
and years ago, when they invented web and all that other stuff, make a long story short, we were told not to use the news posts very much because many students never log out of their web course, at which time when they log back in or don't they turn it back on, it automatically skips to where they were, which is not on the first page news. Therefore, I've used almost exclusively not news posts, but
Mhm.
simply writing an email. Yep.
Oh, really? Yeah. I hadn't noticed that, but you can also send a class list email using the class list tool. Send an email to everyone. That's especially recommended on the first day as everyone's getting started, but also regularly through the semester. It's also a great way to communicate with students. And I believe, so if students have Brightspace Pulse, which is the companion mobile app that they can download, they'll get notifications from the news posts. I believe if you do use news postings, that they also get some kind of email alert as well. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Doty. And again, that's up to your preference. But either way, just keeping up regular communication with students is what is really important. Unfortunately, I don't think you can schedule a class list email in advance. I think that, I mean, you can save a draft and then send it later, but it won't automatically send out in the same way that news announcements will. Okay, so and then finally, another underutilized tool that we will actually be having a workshop on January 13th. My colleague Heather Ripito is going to be leading that. It's intelligent agents. And if you haven't used intelligent agents before, I highly recommend taking a look at that. Intelligent agents essentially allow you to automate routine communications with students. So for instance, you can set one up to send a customized email that you write to all students who don't turn in an assignment. So if they meet that criteria, if they didn't turn in the assignment, you can have a kind of form email already ready to go, just saying, hey, I noticed that you didn't turn in this assignment. Just a reminder, this is worth 20% of your grade. Please let me know if you need any help completing the assignment, something like that. So it can be somewhat personal, even if it is automated. The system will automatically send out that email when students meet that criteria. And that's something you can set up at the beginning of the semester if you know already what some of those routine emails are going to be, and save yourself a little bit of time and still maintain that communication with students. It seems a little bit impersonal, but I've had success using these before. And when I normally wouldn't have been able to dedicate the time to emailing each individual student, or going out of my way to notice whether or not they turned in a particular assignment or submitted a particular quiz. That's something you can automate and automatically set up. And it's great for making sure that students don't just um, fall off, as they often do in online classes, and without much explanation. There is that ability to at least automate that. Okay, so we've got in the chat, I've used the attendance tool, although it seems cumbersome. Yes, so you can set up D2L does have an attendance tool as well. I have not worked with that extensively, but and I don't know if anything has changed with that tool recently. Heather or Diana may have particular recommendations for setting that up in terms of getting ready for the semester. But if you already have a sense of what your online attendance requirements will be, that might be a good tool for monitoring that. Diana in the chat says that the attendance tool is somewhat cumbersome and there haven't been any major changes to how it looks or how it is used. But she has a guide that we would be happy to share around if folks are interested in exploring that tool a little bit more. Okay, so as promised, if you would like to look at any of these in particular, I know we already had someone mention quick links, so I would like to go over into D2L and take a look at that quickly. But is there anything else in this list that jumps out at you that you would like to at least take a look at in D2L, be it quizzes or rubrics, scheduled news posts, or intelligent agents? Rubrics, excellent. So we are going to change gears a little bit and switch over to the browser to take a look at this live in D2L. Can everyone see my browser screen in
I have a
D2L?
question about quizzes real quick, if it's possible.
Sure.
So when I set my quizzes up, I usually have a thing called quizzes, and then I'll have like 5 or 6 quizzes listed under there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're either always all auto-graded or not auto-graded. Is there a way to have some auto-graded and some not auto-graded? Because sometimes I have multiple guesses and sometimes I have them right responses.
Yeah, there is. So if you have written responses, if you have any written response questions in a quiz, it will not auto grade. It will automatically count that question as 0 until you manually grade it. So you can have all of your multiple choice questions be auto graded,
Right.
but just the written response won't be. And yeah, you can set up each quiz individually in terms of how it's assessed. In the assessment tab, if you go to edit a quiz, assessment, you can choose whether or not you want it to be auto graded or have that grade automatically published to the gradebook. Does that answer your question?
I guess, I mean, I usually have, if I did quizzes individually like that, it would work, but I have one section called quizzes and I have all my quizzes listed under it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, so you have a category
Yeah,
for
category, thank you.
for
I don't think I
quizzes.
had that option. It's in either or. I'm just wondering if there's a way to do both.
So when it comes, I think, yeah, you can custom set each quiz individually using that assessment tab that I just showed you. But I think if you have multiple choice questions and you have and you've set it like a correct answer, that the system is going to auto grade that right or wrong. So in that case, yeah, I suppose it is kind of either or, though if you do have written response questions, those won't be graded. And it's possible, if because if you do have written response questions, they'll get counted as 0. So students might panic a little bit if they see that their grade is artificially lowered prior to you doing that manual grading of the written response questions. It's also possible to not publish those scores until you're ready for them to see them, until after you have graded those written response questions. So I hope that speaks to your question and to your concern.
Yeah, thank
But
you.
everything, all of that will be set in the assessment tab.
Okay, thanks.
No, you're welcome. So we have a couple of questions. We have some folks who want to look at rubrics and intelligent agents. We will do that very quickly. Again, intelligent agents are going to be covered in more depth in the workshop on January 13th. Great question from Robert Siegel. Is there a way to create a getting started module with an auto grade quiz at the end so that the rest of the course will not open until they pass the quiz? Yes, you can do that using release conditions. So I will show that to you as quickly as possible. So if you have a module, say, and you would like for students to first pass a quiz at the end of the getting started module, say it's your syllabus quiz. You want them to score 100% before they begin the rest of the course. You would go to the next module and under add dates and restrictions, go to release conditions, create, and then go down to quizzes. And the condition is going to be based on the score that the student received on the quiz. You select the quiz. And if you want them, say you want them to score 100, equal to 100, you could also have them score less than, greater than any particular percentage that you would like. Or if you just want them to have submitted a quiz, so completed quiz attempt, that's also a possibility. You have a lot of options in that menu in terms of what condition you want to put on something. And you can really put a condition on a module that has to do with any assignment, whether if you want them to submit something to the Dropbox or post in a discussion, that can also be a condition that when it's met will unlock the next module. So we create that, update, and you'll see this come up at the top. All conditions must be met. The student must receive equal to 100% on the quiz, chapter 1 quiz. And this module that we're in won't be visible to them until they do that. A word of warning about release conditions, though, students don't know that they're set up unless you tell them that they are. So you may want to say something in the previous module. You have to complete this quiz at 100% in order to unlock the rest of the course or the next module. Thank you for that question, Robert.
1 second, you got a second? Let me ask this additional.
Sure.
Are we just, does that condition just close the one module you're talking about, or can you open and close the entire course?
Oh, you're right. And I did misspeak. So this does close just the module that you set the condition for. But you can set it in such a way that your conditions are cascading, if that makes sense. So if you have the next module, say, and I apparently already have a release condition here, you can just set the same condition there as well. So in order to access any of the modules, you just have to go in and set a condition, must score 100% on the syllabus quiz, which I know is really repetitive, and I wish there was an easier way to do that. But as far as I know, that is the only way to set it up so that the rest of the course isn't accessible. You'd have to go into each module and do it.
100 thank yous.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the great question. Okay, so rubrics as promised. If you don't know where rubrics are, they are in the edit course function in any course you have an instructor access to up here in the nav bar. Rubrics are down here under assessment. And it's super easy to create a new rubric. I'm not going to go through step by step how to do that, but I will give you a preview of what one already made looks like. So we have, say, an essay rubric here. And if you've ever seen a rubric, it looks just like one you might see on paper. It's just a grid. This right column is the different criteria that you want students to meet. So say you have an essay assignment and you are grading it based on the accuracy of their responses, their use of evidence and examples, and probably some other criteria more than I've included here. Then you can assign a point value to each of those criteria, different levels of performance. So exemplary, proficient, needs work, or insufficient. And the great thing about rubrics, you can attach them to any assignment, especially assignment Dropbox or discussion. And use that to grade submissions. Find one I can grade right quick. And I think I mentioned this before, but the great thing about having that rubric is that you can actually go line by line. So your rubric will display like this once you attach it to an assignment, and you can check off where they rank in terms of each category or each criteria. And it will automatically generate a score based on the points that you have assigned to each of those criteria. Yes, Howard?
Yeah, could I ask a real question having to do with the ADA? I've quit using any type of columns because ADA allows or reads the columns you just showed. What about?
So as far as I know, D2L rubrics should be fine as far as accessibility is concerned. Though, simply because the LMS is designed with those concerns in mind. I haven't heard anything in terms of the student experience in terms of difficulty accessing D2L rubrics or having those display correctly. Diana or Heather may have something else to say. So please chime in if there is any accessibility concern in terms of rubrics. The concern with tables is more if you're creating your own tables in Word. You don't have to not use tables. It's possible to format those with accessibility. We just kind of urge people to avoid using them unless they absolutely need them, say to display data, which is primarily the purpose of tables, just because it can be a little time consuming and requires often some advanced Microsoft Word skills to make sure that that table is accessible. But you don't have to completely avoid using tables. And in this case, the D2L rubrics tool should be fully accessible. But that's a great question. It's a really great concern to bring up. And as far as I know, any tool that is contained within D2L should be accessible, fully accessible to students, simply because this is something that's very much on the radar of Brightspace, which is the parent company for D2L. Okay, so that is just your super quick introduction to rubrics. I'll include some resources in the slides that I'll send around if you are interested in a more in-depth how to set up rubrics guide. But we also had a request for intelligent agents, very briefly, to show you where that is and what those look like. They're also in your edit course area, but they are under communication, intelligent agents. And I'll just show you this example that I've created. So this one is called Missing Final Paper Draft. So you can just give it an intuitive title depending on what you want it to do. And what you can do with these is very similar to the release conditions that we set up with the modules earlier. You create a release condition to attach to the agent. So if you want the agent to email all students who did not turn in a final paper draft, you could do this by creating a release condition in the same way as we did with the modules for that. So there's an option, has not submitted to Dropbox folder final paper draft, or there's any number of different options. Didn't score a particular score on a quiz, didn't post in a discussion, anything like that. Or even you could even use these for praise. It doesn't have to just be for wagging your finger at those who didn't turn things in. If students scored, say if they got an A on an exam, you might write a personalized email that just says, hey, great job, great work on the exam. So it doesn't always have to be necessarily punitive. So once you've set up the condition that you want to attach with your intelligent agent, you'll want to make sure that check this send an email button. So send an email when the criteria that we set above are satisfied. So if the student does not submit to the Dropbox folder by a certain date, you set that there. It goes to initiating user. The initiating user is the student because they're the ones who they're the one who did or didn't do something. You'll write your subject, and then you can write a personalized email. I mean, leaving it general enough because this might go to multiple students at once. So, hello, I couldn't help but notice that you have not yet submitted the final paper draft, which was due on January 4th, 2022, etc. And then down in the scheduling part, that's where you determine when the intelligent agent will run or when it will identify users to send that email to. So if the paper, say, was due January 4th, you could set the schedule to run for the first time on January 4th until January 6th or whatever period of time you want it to run. So that is a very lightning fast introduction to intelligent agents. You can do all kinds of things with them. If you have the time, I encourage you to go to the workshop on January 13th or play around with this tool yourself in your own course shell. But very, very valuable tool and often underutilized.
And it's really good for like, even for a basic level of setting an agent to, if a student hasn't logged in more than like 4 days or something like that into their course, it'll send them an email. So
that's right. Yeah. So I totally skipped over this part. But you can also have it monitor login activity. You can create a bot essentially that will take action. In most cases, it's going to be send an email when the following login criteria is satisfied. If the user has not logged in during the last 10 days or something like that, or course activity, if they have not accessed the course in the last 10 days, maybe you have an email that will automatically go out and just automate that process of kind of reaching out and making sure students are staying on task. It's just a little bit of prodding to say, hey, I'm just checking in. I noticed you haven't logged in for the last 10 days. So it's a super useful tool, and knowing that we have so many students, we can't necessarily personalize our communications as much as we would like to for everyone. It can be a great time saver in that area. Okay, what else do we have that we wanted to go over? How to transport content from another course shell into the current course shell, and that is a excellent thing to bring up and something we're going to go over right now because I know it is on a lot of people's minds. If you are importing a course from a previous semester or you're importing another course from your department, say, and using content that's been provided. I'll just walk you through how to do that. So again, we're going to go to edit course. A lot of these, really fun specialized tools are in the edit course area, so it's somewhat hidden. Edit course. Import, export, and copy components is what you're going to want to click on under site resources. And you have a couple of options here. If you're wanting to copy another course or course contents into your course shell, you're just going to leave this checked on copy components from another org unit. Click search for offering. And then you can search for any course that you are enrolled in that you have instructor access to. So if, I know in some cases, departments will have a master course shell that they want instructors to copy content from, but if you're not enrolled as an instructor in that, it won't pop up. So just be sure to ask for instructor access if you need it, or if it doesn't come up in this search. And here we can look for any course that we have teaching access to. Essentially, I'm just going to find one that I know I have available. Just click on the course that you want once you find it. Add selected. If you want to copy the entire course into the course shell that you are currently in, you'll just then click copy all components. I'm not going to do that because I don't actually want to do that now. If you only want to copy certain parts of the course, so say you only want to grab the quizzes or you only want to grab the content, you'll go to select components down here at the bottom. And that'll bring you to a screen where you can pick and choose what it is you want to copy over. So let's say I want the content, I want the discussions, I want the drop boxes, And I don't know, I want the quizzes. So you would just click on those. If there are select items in that category that you want, you would choose this option, select individual items to copy. And then when you hit continue on the next page, it'll give you the option to again pick and choose items from that category that you want. So you don't have to copy everything. A word of warning on this page, if you do copy content and you have videos, Kaltura videos, or external learning tools of any kind, if you have links to McGraw-Hill publisher materials, Kaltura, anything like that, any kind of external learning tool, so any tool other than D2L, you want to make sure that you click external learning tools too. So just to reiterate, if you're copying content that has any external learning tools anywhere in it, want to make sure that you click both of those together. Otherwise, you might have some broken videos or links. Let me click continue. And then if you'll recall, I wanted to pick out certain discussions out of that category. So if you opted for that, you can choose different ones. So you only want module 1 and continue. And then this next page will be super useful to those of you who are copying a course from a previous semester into one for the spring semester, because this page will allow you to offset dates. So everything that you had in your course from the last semester has certain due dates that are associated with, say, fall 2021. They need to be spring 2022 now. So you can offset all dates of copied components here. Offset direction and range. By direction, they mean, do you want to go forwards in time or backwards in time? Most likely forward. In our case, if we're going for spring 2022. So this is for days and for hours. So if you want to go forward a certain number of days, say 100 days, you'll have to you'll either have to figure that out on your own, how many days difference it is between the last semester and the next semester, or calculate range between two dates. So if you're copying content that was from, I don't know, October 2021, and you want it to now be set to April 2022, you can also calculate the range between two dates and have that applied to your course contents. And then you would click finish to finish that import process. And any content that you imported would then appear in its appropriate place within the course shell.
There's also a scheduling app. You can do the scheduling stuff later if you're not comfortable figuring it out at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So there may be a little bit of calculation involved. It depends on how much stuff that you have and how uniform the movement forward in time is going to be. If you're going to have quite different dates, or they're not going to move forward uniformly, then it might pay to just go through and change the due dates manually. So we have another question in chat. How do you save or download a course from a previous semester? Then how to upload it as a course package. So you can download your entire course, I believe, from the Manage Files option, which is in Edit Course. So you go to Edit Course, Manage Files. And you can select all here and then download. And you'll download that as a zip file that contains all of the files that are present in your course to your personal computer, if you would like to have that as a file saved to your hard drive. And of course, you can also pick and choose if there are files that you want to download in particular, and others that you would rather not have. You can also pick and choose from that. As for how to upload it as a course package, that's also going to be done in the import, export, copy components tool that we were in earlier. Also in Edit Course, import, export, copy components. And then you can import you can copy components, but you could also import components. So meaning that you're importing them from a file most often. So from a course package, that's if you have a zip file like that you had downloaded from a previous course. There's also an option to, if you wanted to export as a Brightspace package. I'm not entirely sure how that all works, but if you're, I think that would work if you were moving, say, between institutions. You had downloaded a bunch of your course content from one institution, you could take that, but maybe the zip file would probably work better. So import components from a course package, start, and then you would just simply upload your zip file. That's generally what it prefers in terms of a course package. It has to be in a zip format, which is how it would come downloaded from the managed files area. This area, I'd also, if you are wanting to add files to your course, it's usually better to just put them into your content where you want it to go, because you just have more control and there's just more visual cues about where it's going to go on the page. But you can also upload regular files here as well. So like documents or PowerPoints, images, you can also put that into managed files from this page. Does that answer your question? Your name is appearing as Mulaney B.
We're hitting time right now, so
Okay.
if anyone else has questions, feel free to reach out to Anna or Heather or me or Diana or Beverly, or just our online.learning@nscc email.
Absolutely.
And we can schedule consults. You can ask as many questions as you want, or we can help you just prep for the semester. So
Absolutely. Happy to help. Feel free to reach out anytime. I did have an additional resource that I'm going to share around with everyone that is an actual checklist that goes through some of these items, if that is useful to you as you are prepping for the semester. But we are going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for coming and for your wonderful questions. All very useful, and I really hope that this was also useful to you. I'll be sending around a survey afterwards and some of these resources, the PowerPoints and the recording that we have. So thanks so
And-
much for attending.
we will have open office Zoom hours next week from 10 to 1 every day, except for maybe Friday, because I think we're doing presentations all day Friday. But I'll send out that information link by tomorrow. So just keep an eye out for that. But feel
Yeah.
free to email us for any content or questions.
Yeah, and I'll be here. I'll hang back just a few moments in case anybody has anything that they would like to address here at the end. But otherwise, we are finished. And I hope if you have further questions, feel free to reach out. And as Jamie said, we will have open hours 10 to 1 next week if you would like to come and work through any issues that you're having.